Hello guys, welcome to another mixing tutorial. Today we're taking a look at my tones on this cover of Absolomb by PERIPHERY. Featuring the pristine lead playing of Kian Houshmand from Australia. The legend, been supporting him since day one, and it's good to see how well he is doing on YouTube, on Instagram. Fuck yes, I love that guy, and I love Periphery. Let's get on to it. Turn off the mix bus processing, except the limiter. That's right. Cool, I'll explain that at the end. This drum sound, since it's a Periphery cover, I went back to my Periphery 4 drum sound using the GGDP4 kit, obviously, and this one is available for you to watch on YouTube, like I've explained many times, on my P4 demo review video. So if you can just go there, I give that exact mix on that review video. Basically the first mix I cooked up with the kit, and I never had the urge to change it. It's just always worked. Nice balanced metal drum mix that I use for a lot of Periphery covers, of course, because it's very reminiscent of Nolly's sound. And yeah, you could check that one out at that video. That leaves me more room in this mixing tutorial to talk about other cool shit, namely this big ass bass tone. So many plugins, they all do small stuff though. So first things first, fresh strings. Excuse the clipping on the limiter because the DI is very hot. So fresh strings on an unusual bass here. This is the Thunderbird Dude. So the first bass I ever played, my dad bought it for the family. Me and him learned bass back in the day. Still on here, still going strong with a very honky, very low mid-range and mid-range present tone. You can hear it go ga ga ga. You can hear those mids roaring. And we use that to our advantage. It's not the usual Dingwall high mid slap. It's like a low mid bark. We make it work. The main engine for the bass tone is STL Tone Hub. This is Bass Classic Grind on the Lassie Lambert pack. Lassie Lambert has one of the best Tone Hub packs with the biggest amount of tones, the heaviest of them as well, and some of my favorite bass ones as well. So if you're looking for a Tone Hub pack, Lassie is a very good pick. An insanely heavy, insanely barky tone. And then, you guys know I usually like Joel Onsek bus glue bass to get a bass tone from scratch from the DI, but here I'm using it on top of the amp track without adding distortion. This allows me to rebalance the high end and low end in a way that I like. So when I turn it on and off, you see that I balance the high end to be a little bit louder, and I also compress both the bottom end and the high end. You can hear the top end is more present in this one. Excuse the volume loss. It's part of how I gain staged it. It came out very loud of the amp, so I turned it down here. And then it was all about controlling those mids. Here we are. So. A few notches there. A few brightness boosts. And the big mid cuts are at around 200, a bit of boominess. And Joel Wanasek guy always adds a little bit of 700 honkiness. No, that would be if I had the distortion on. This is just from the bass coming from these pickups that are very mid-range heavy. This helps it fit right in. At about this moment, I decided that I wanted a little bit more drive to the bass, but instead of increasing the drive on the amplifier here, which can sound a bit muddy, I distorted the DI before the amp with Saturn. Between around 800 and 3K, I made the DI sound a bit like this. I give it a very nice mid-range grind into the amp. Turned out super well. This EQ after this is a little cheat, and it looks very weird. Why it looks that way is because I grabbed the original Absolomb and I told ProQ to listen to this bass and to match my bass with Nolly's bass in terms of EQ. Of course, the distortion and compression and strings and all that, they're still my responsibility, but the EQ shape, this helps it get closer. It comes up with so many crazy EQ points. I removed about half of them and stuck to the ones that were most important. It surprisingly boosted these low mids. A big cut at 1K, which apparently was too much on my bass, becomes a completely different tone with it. A few notches, aggressive spikes that the original bass tone had that actually fit pretty good. They add a bit of character, and the original bass apparently had a lot more high end, which it compensated for. Very cool, two different tones. It's like it's trying to give me the string slap of the Dingwall through EQ. Very, very cool there. Compression. Compression is here to give me pick attack. With a slower attack and a slower release, I can have it react to my pick attack a little bit more and make it sound like I'm picking even harder. If you ignore the volume loss, focus on the pick attack relative to the sustain, it's all there. After this, I thought I could afford more subs, so I added R bass at 65, which is the low C frequency. The song is in the key of C, super, super slight, and then I reduced a little bit of the boominess that it adds just to keep that sub goodness. Oops, without both? With both. Just the tiniest bit fatter. That's the bass tone. Fresh strings on the mayonnaise. Into one of my favorites for Periphery, the SS11 guy. It's a very fizzy sound that this guy gives that lends itself to the martially part of the Periphery tone. Weird words, but yeah, accurate. And using their V30 cabinet, I usually like the greenbacks, but if you move to the V30, you get way more of that mid-rangey Periphery thing. Greenbacks are very sharp. V30s are more mid-rangey. It's all about now controlling it. And boy, oh boy, what is this bullshit? The most important one is a dynamic EQ to reduce these palm mutes. Make sure the palm mutes are getting their low end reduced, but the chords aren't. That helps a lot. And then there's a lot of little spikes that aren't too important. The big ones are boosting 1.5 for presence. And the biggest cut was at 3.8. which I tried to further soothe here. Those are the 3 guitar plugins. Kian's lovely solos are the same SS11X. Switching from the second V30 to the first V30 gives it less high end and a bit more mid range, what you want for a solo. Love this guy. So boosting 2K, that solo-y frequency, and cutting 4K, which is annoying. Dropping out fizz and boosting the shine. A dynamic thing just helps with the rumbles at the end. Just that. And a shelf instead of a cut. Just a different way of taming the subs without neutering them completely. There's your boy, the delay. 8th note ping pong. Not much to talk about. Into a tiny 20% 3-second reverb, cut some low end. Solo tone. The top leads, they're the same tone as the solo, surprisingly, because I wanted them to be on a similar spectrum. And the EQ is very similar as well. Yep. Just a little bit more cutting in the aggressive stuff. Same soothe. Oi. Now here soothe is flatter because I'm not trying to use it to just cut harshness, but also balance the mid-range out of every note. Cool way to use soothe. Into a bigger reverb, 36, 8 seconds, giving me a soundscape instead of just the notes, and probably the same delay. Yeah. Very good. And at the end of the song, we'll have the same sound. But with the reverb at 100%, you get this post-rock type lead. Cut a lot of low end out of it. Or it can get rumbly. During the solo and very quietly, sorry, it's late at night. During the solo and very quietly during the leads before, there's a double of the tapping lead on the synth. So that is Serum, my new synth plugin. I'm still learning how to use it. For now, I created this very simple, it's basically a saw tone. Put a filter on it. And put some doubling and reverb. Good enough for layering, especially if you EQ out a little bit of the boomy lows and do a trick where you cut frequencies from the mid channel on Pro Q3 so that it adds like a stereo widening effect where the middle becomes a little bit more quiet and the sides consequentially more loud. So solo is in the middle. Good. The choir, there's a choir. Here it's very secret. It's just adding a little bit of chord support, but at the end is where it's most important. So your standard choir from Expand always works. Heavy 67% reverb at 7 seconds. into a little bit of mid-range cut. That's it. Just as a layer. Giving you a little bit of epicness. Here at the tom section, this is my first recording of my drums. That's gonna be live on a cover. I play the orchestral tom part. Hell yes. So I made the overhead very loud because it sounds the closest to an epic orchestra. Because it has room information there. And it's all about heavy EQ. Just tons of mid-range cuts. These are the direct toms, so a little cut on the high one, a little cut on the low one, and then a big ass cut at the boss. Affects the overhead too, boosts the high end, into a little hall reverb, a little bit wet, like 30%. Please. I think that was cool, and it's gonna be fun in the video. And just EQ, no compression, which I should have done. So there's your strings, spiccatos from Sonyvox. This is the EQ. I want constant high-end boost, but there's a note that's poking out. The dynamic thing catches it. You could see which ones it was. Labs is so perfect as always that it needs no processing at all. Bass from Sonyvox. Yep, a little bit of low-end cuts so that it doesn't sound more powerful than my actual distorted bass. All into the same reverb that the toms were going, just to make consistency in that section, and a little bit of a cut to the mids of everything. Very, very cool. When it comes to cleans, fuck yeah, bro. So this is also something new. I have the Wolf Putney Tone Hub, which I got. Funny enough, first thing I use it ever on is on cleans. So the cleans on it are very cool, very interesting. We all know Wolf Putney for the badass distorted metal tones, of course. But these cleans, very, very chimey, right? Split coil DI. Lovely mid-range on these, and the effects on Tone Hub were perfect for the thing. So like tons of reverb, tons of length. These settings are never very specific for me to tell you what they are, right? And a delay, very, very present and important. 8th note ping pong. It's gonna make the rhythm of this part. I compress it a little bit. To kill the pick attack with a super fast attack on the compressor. And yeah, this is the shaping. Getting rid of subs on the pick attack probably. Dipping mids and boosting high end. Not a big difference. And this is meant to be an ambient to the solo. And to this part. Good. The intro cleans are the same tone. Yep. maybe a little bit less delay. Double tracked at 50% panning. So not 100% panning, a little bit inwards so that the distorted guitars feel big and wide when they come in. And yeah, it's the same tone. The compressor will now be on the bus and the EQ as well, instead of on one track. To note that the compressor here has a slower attack so that it does let pick attack go through, which I want here. I didn't want in that one because it went over a solo and that got confusing. Here I can let the pick attack, like 5 milliseconds of it, go through. Very good. Now we want to blow this up in the master. Always like to run my mix through Golfos. Just a little bit of these parameters tries to make your mix into a slightly more pleasant EQ. It always acts dynamically, balances your low end a little bit and cuts to the mid-range a little bit, and always adds a little bit of shine to the cymbals, which I sometimes hate and sometimes like. I think it sounds just the 2% better. And if it does, it's a good thing. Mix bus compression. I want the kick and snare to be tucked into the mix. They are always mixed the loudest so that the compressor can tell the rest of the mix to clamp down as soon as they hit. No transformer option because this mix has a new... I used to beef up the mix a little bit because it affects the low end and the glue. Have a new thing for that today. And yeah, you'll see kick and snare being hit just a little bit. Does make a difference. Like everything can become like as loud as the drums. Another compressor I like, a linear phase multiband. You know, my goal with this guy is always to make sure that every band moves a little bit, and then I can pick my battles and try to control different frequency regions differently. Here I just wanted them to move mostly evenly and become a second layer of compression. But today's beefener is a new guy, Oxford Inflator. I don't know what this guy does. It just does, right? So it's called Effect, the thing it does. And this guy makes your mix louder without really sacrificing a lot of information. Usually you make mix louder by sacrificing drum transients or bass, subs. This guy has a cool just effect. What does it read? Yeah, the inflator effect. Hear it for yourself. I tried to do a level match there. As you could see, it inflates the mix. The mix feels a little bit fuller. So far, I like it because it's a different flavor than these saturation ones that made the mix fuller, but also a little bit more claustrophobic. This feels more open than these saturation options. So far, this is a good plus on the mix bus, making it bigger. Limiter, working less today because this guy already softens everything a little bit. So I don't need to work hard here. You see it basically just chopping the tippy top of the kick and snare. And to add to this vibe of doing very little with very varied tools, I get the last bit of gain. Instead of pushing it here, I push it on an even... Ooh, hello. That's a first. That's a fail. I push it on yet a different limiter, Pro L2. So it's very little things on 6 different plugins that add to a huge difference. by doing little on a lot of plugins, you avoid artifacts like pumping and distortion, other stuff, because you're dividing the workload between tools. No one tool works too hard. I'm happy with this result. I hope you liked it and learned something. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope to see you in the next one. Leave questions down below and take care.